Gangs of London is an award-winning TV show created by Gareth Evans, the man behind the Raid films. Somehow, this show has flown under everyone's radar, and I think it deserves much more recognition. While I'll specifically be talking about episode 5 from season 1, the whole show is full of glorious action choreography and intriguing characters. This is a standalone episode that focuses entirely on side characters. It is one of the best directed and choreographed episodes of television I've ever seen, and I'd love to share my thoughts and some behind-the-scenes information with you. Darren is on the run because he shot the head of the Wallace crime family, Finn Wallace. Kenny is his absent father trying to protect him, and so he sends him to a secluded cabin with his uncle Mal to be taken into hiding. The cabin belongs to an older woman named Evie that has a business manufacturing and selling bullets. The episode starts with Kenny trying to escape and recuperate from an assault that happened at a gypsy trailer park a few episodes prior. Kenny is slowly but steadily making his way across the countryside to his son. He comes across a house where he steals a car from a small family, but then leaves the father alive because he just wants to help out his son. Later, while trying to patch his wounds, he hides in a bar bathroom and narrowly escapes being caught by the undercover mercenary. As Kenny gets closer and closer to the cabin, you also see the mercenaries well-equipped and preparing for the assault. There's so much going on behind the scenes that makes this episode the spectacle that it is. This drone shot showing the mercenaries honing in on Kenny's location is actually 3 shots stitched together. Then the way the camera follows the truck back to the cabin, it neatly shows the lay of the land and gives you an idea of how far everyone is away from each other. This way, you know that when Darren looks out the window and sees Kenny stumbling down the hill injured, you know the mercenaries aren't far behind and a massacre is about to happen. Then, the group of Danish mercenaries unleash coordinated tactical hell on the stone cottage. If this was the finale of a James Bond film, it would be the best one yet. The fact that they were able to do this in the first season of a new TV show is insane. It has some of the best gun action and choreography you will ever see. Logistically, because of time constraints, Gareth had 3 units shooting footage for the sequence at the same time. For 3 or 4 days in a row, Gareth's main unit was shooting in the loft with Mal, while a second unit was shooting the mercenaries approaching the house to put the C4 on. And then there was a 3rd unit down at the docks doing some insert shots. Behind the main house set they had built, they had a separate set of just the 3rd floor loft, so they wouldn't have to lug their equipment up and down the stairs the whole shoot. They also had a 3rd set section of solely the rooftop built, so they could get those shots of the mercenaries against the sky, putting the C4 down and ripping up the tiles. They only had 1 wide shot of the actors up there on the real rooftop with wires, because having the separate set built was much more time efficient in the long run. So throughout the entire shooting process, Gareth was having to juggle observing 3 monitors and watching the playback footage of each unit while he was also shooting himself. He also has to give notes on what each unit has to reshoot and do differently to get the best shots. He says his mind felt fragmented after that period and it was incredibly exhausting. Gareth also edits the footage into the previs that they did early in pre-production while he's still on set to make sure everything is working perfectly. This is fairly unusual because normally the editing process is done almost entirely after shooting. He also doesn't shoot any coverage, meaning he only has cameras shooting the footage exactly the way he wants the content to be in the final product.
Gareth was always very precise around that. Like, action requires the same treatment as story in a way. Like, you really develop it, you find a language in action.
Other TV and film sets will have multiple cameras set up to record different angles to make sure they have enough footage for if down the road they find out something was wrong with what they initially shot. It's up to the filmmakers and sometimes the budget to determine whether or not shooting coverage is doable.
I'm really quite a perfectionist, and if I've seen it in a certain way, I want to be able to do it just like that. I wanted to be able to really represent the work that they had done in pre-production and make sure that we were sharing that with our audience.
I think there's something really finalizing and artistic about only shooting precisely what you want because that's the only way you envisioned it. And putting that vision into reality in such a meticulous and masterful way is something to be respected. Now, closing in on how this episode plays out, I'll get into spoiler deaths, so go watch the episode now if you haven't. After this massacre, Darren and Kenny are able to escape down a trap door and head towards the dock, while Evie stays behind in the house to buy them time. There was one section right here that had to get removed from shooting because of time constraints. What would have happened is after they go down the trap door and Evie says she'll hold them back as long as she can, they had a part where Evie was going to slam down the trap door and then run over to her iron cupboard. She would be getting shot in the process, and the mercenaries would have been throwing in phosphorus grenades, and she'd be half on fire and then slam the iron door shut. Then, as the smoke was dissipating, you'd hear the winding up of a mini railgun, and Evie would start decimating some of the mercs. And then after the chaos, she'd run out of bullets and then dive down the crawl space. The mercs would then shoot her down in the tunnel and she would die there. Instead, in the end, Gareth said he was actually glad that this got cut because he said it would have changed the tone a bit too much. Not only would it have added 2 or 3 days to the shoot that they couldn't spare, but he also thought the siege had to end a bit sooner in the story. I think in the version that we have now, it works out better for Tove, the girl who just saw her partner get obliterated by a grenade. Now she gets to come in and execute Evie, and take out her anger on her before they can even question her or use her for anything else. Speaking of Tove, the timing of this episode is also an interesting choice that I haven't touched on yet. It comes right after an episode that has a dramatic cliffhanger, and then they focus on the standalone story with none of the main cast in the entire episode. This girl Tove that just saw her lover die is the same girl that tried to assassinate Sean Wallace in the previous episode. So chronologically, this episode should come first, but now it recontextualizes why she showed hesitation and is so rattled when she gets Sean in her sights. Back to the aftermath of the attack that we got in the end. The mercenaries go around the cabin and down the hill towards the end of the tunnel. Inside, Kenny and Darren have an altercation and then a heart-to-heart moment that's been building up over the entire series. You'd have to watch the rest of the series to be able to fully appreciate the meaning of this moment, but it's very well done. Once they get out, they rush to the dock to escape, but the ruthless mercenary guns them down. Even though you assume they are both going to die in this episode, they give you a little bit of hope that just one of them will make it out alive. It's amazing how much you can be invested in these side characters with the amount of screen time that they have. The pacing of this episode and directing make it feel so intimate and grounded to the characters, and I was just filled with adrenaline the whole time.